I see this prevalent idea about men approaching women in person on Reddit often, and it may be seen elsewhere. Many people, especially men, admit they do not approach women they are interested in out of fear of negative consequences or being seen as creepy. It seems they feel they are only allowed to approach on dating apps. In real life, I have faced those fears and approached women, and it turned out well. While I had limited success, dating for me has always been a numbers game. Where did this idea come from? Based on the replies from many who hesitate to approach, I suspect a conspiracy theory, though I have no evidence. I believe that dating app companies are secretly convincing everyone that it is creepy to approach women so that they will download and pay for their apps. Story 1. We often hear statements like, "I'm tired of being asked out all the time. I wish people would leave me alone." This leads to the assumption that all women feel the same way, resulting in hesitation to ask anyone out. Personally, I feel so far behind that I wonder who would want to date me. Story 2. I don't like approaching strangers about anything. I find it too nerve-wracking. Attractive women are not particularly special here. Story 3. I started dating before the internet. And no, it was never easy. Being rejected is difficult. The advice of just move on to the next one doesn't work for guys like me. I wish it did, but that's the way it goes. Online dating sounded like it would help. For me, it was just another way to face rejection. Story 4. Plenty of voices online are expressing various places they would rather not be approached. This sentiment is also expressed in person. Here is my comment from the last time this topic came up. Story 5. First, it is more dangerous because of social media. An accusation can follow you for a long time, even if it does not go to court. Second, it is not only that it is more dangerous. We have yet another variable that we overthinkers can use to convince ourselves not to act. Story 6. Mostly the internet. Wonder how many of your approaches seemed fine in person, but later the woman complained to her friends or social media followers about being approached. Any situation you can think of, a woman has complained about a guy approaching her in that exact situation online. That's why sometimes you just have to unplug and live in the real world. Story 7. The main problem is that men are obligated to initiate contact. This is the root of the issue. My theory is that men are expected to approach due to the emotional risks involved, such as embarrassment and rejection. This requires confidence and overcoming nerves. It is an unacknowledged act of service. Despite all the discussion about equality, women generally do not want this role. It can be a significant blow to the ego for men, who are expected to endure it indefinitely. When men are solely responsible for initiating contact, it leads to a numbers game, resulting in women receiving a disproportionate amount of attention compared to their male counterparts, who often receive none. Additionally, it can be challenging for women to say no, as some men may not react well and can become aggressive. Dealing with these situations can be uncomfortable for women. To address this issue, women need to share some of the responsibility. Instead, they often criticize where men approach without offering solutions or demonstrating an ability to do better. Story 8. Where? From women's mouths. I don't mean online where individuals can pretend to be women. I heard it repeatedly in real life from women when I was 15 to 25. The standard for men was already pretty high back then. Since I wasn't exactly a young Johnny Depp at that time, I just thought, oh well, whatever, and started to carve out a single life. I haven't really thought much about getting married since those days. Story 9. A couple of places. 1. General social anxiety. Men today are less sociable than they have been in the past. This has created greater social stress. Therefore, today they are worse at picking up social hints and cues, increasing the chances of failure. Women. Many women have outright said they do not want to be approached. Truthfully, most women want to be approached by men they find attractive and charming. Any man they do not find attractive is a waste of their time. It is safer to assume they do not find you attractive. Perception. You cannot control how a woman will perceive your advances. There is a respectful way to approach a woman. However, I have seen men get called creeps for innocent interactions. I have also seen men get away with crass behavior. Most interactions are fine, The poor interactions are overrepresented online and in social gossip. Cowardice. Many men cannot handle rejection. They would rather not play the game. They let women control their self-worth. Stamina. As you said, it is a numbers game. Social interactions are invigorating to some and exhausting to others. If interacting with new people is difficult for you, it is easy not to do it. Story 10. You will receive a variety of answers here, and that is your answer. First and foremost, different women have different preferences regarding where and how they like to be approached. Second, many men do not respect those preferences, many of which are shared and sensible, such as while shopping or working out. Third, respectful men often do not approach even in appropriate settings. Lastly, social media tends to amplify negative narratives, which is why you hear more about these issues than the positive instances where people are actually mingling and meeting each other. Story 11. It's the message that has been forcefully conveyed to every young man for the last decade. I recall attending mandatory university orientations as a freshman that framed any interaction with the opposite sex as a potential sexual assault. One of my favorite examples they provided was a man complimenting a woman's choice of shirt. According to them, such an interaction requires a report to the university and potential disciplinary action. Story 12. From the viral videos and tweets of women advising not to approach them, which have received tens of thousands of likes and shares, there have never been any viral videos of them expressing a desire for us to approach them. Story 13. I once approached a girl who dropped a $20 bill because she wasn't paying attention. I said, "Excuse me, miss." She replied, "Oh my gosh, I have a boyfriend. You creep, back off." Internally, I thought, all right, I guess I'll go fend for myself. I kept the $20 and bought a burrito on the way home. Even when you try approaching a woman for non-dating reasons, you can get burned. It's just easier to avoid it. Story 14. Because it only takes one person creating a scene and overreacting while recording with her phone, and you're in a difficult situation. Story 15. Many men feel nervous when approaching women. It seems that women often cannot perceive this nervousness, which can come across as unsettling. Additionally, there are many men who exhibit unsettling behavior. Story 16. Women often express frustration about men approaching them. It's important to recognize that women also voice concerns about men not approaching them at all. If that seems confusing, it highlights a dynamic where, through these contrasting statements, women can reinterpret situations to feel misunderstood, while men struggle to comprehend. Story 17. Let me help you out. 1. It was never an issue of can't. 2. It was an issue of don't. Most men lack the confidence to approach women in public. Fear of rejection is difficult to handle. Whether you or anyone approached and it turned out well is irrelevant. Just because you were not rejected doesn't mean I won't get rejected. Just because you were not rejected doesn't mean my fear or anxiety suddenly goes away. However, if I consider myself of higher value than you and see a woman respond positively to you, I will have significantly more confidence to approach her myself. Story 18. Where did this idea come from? I do not understand how you have lived your entire life as a man and not felt the energy of "men don't approach me" radiating from women. I'm not ugly either. The deterrent comes from hearing the things women say about men routinely. This is similar to a woman asking where the idea of patriarchy originates. It is woven into the fabric of society itself. The feeling comes from everything around you, constantly. It's worth mentioning that I have never been to a party, bar, or club. I'm a nerd who goes to classes, the library, and maybe the gym, so I don't put myself in the social settings where women might want to be approached. Story 19. This is a judgment presented as a question. If you were honest, you would make your accusation that men claiming they do not want to take the risk of approaching women are not being truthful. You are partly correct, but you are also overlooking the legitimate concerns that discourage men from doing so. Story 20. I am sure it is rare for a man to receive criticism for making a cold approach in public. However, the risk is not negligible. There are many actions taken on a daily basis that involve risk. One must simply consider whether the benefits outweigh the costs. Story 21. It's not that men can't. Social dynamics simply make it a difficult strategy most of the time. Let's say you want to approach someone in a public place like during a commute, at a coffee shop, gym, bookstore, or grocery store. How can you tell if they're single aside from looking for a wedding ring? Once that's been figured out, are they in an age range you feel comfortable dating? If they are, do they appear talkative or distracted? Are they open to being approached or not in the mood? If they seem friendly and approachable, how can you determine if you'd get along beyond initial attraction? That's already a lot of uncertainties. Nervousness on a man's part can make interactions awkward, depending on the woman's emotional availability and social skills. Women understandably have their guard up in public since there are many suspicious individuals out there. Additionally, there is a lot of discussion online with women expressing their dislike for being approached randomly. Approaching someone in public can easily be perceived as lonely desperation. Depending on the woman's mood and perspective on dating at that moment, she may respond negatively to an approach. This is less likely if they find you attractive, but the chances of that happening are rare, especially given the number of women who say they find most men unattractive. There are many factors at play that can lead to uncomfortable interactions. This leaves more socially open events with friends, such as birthday parties, house gatherings, hobbies, or nights out at gigs or clubs. At these events, you're much more likely to meet someone around your age with similar interests in a setting where random socializing is more acceptable. It's easier to seem like a normal, trustworthy guy rather than coming across as creepy when you're with friends, but these occasions are rarer. Even then, you're still dealing with the same numbers game of availability. Now that I am almost 30, I recall regularly approaching women in public when I was younger. I can't remember any particularly bad experiences, but I can count on one hand the number of times I've heard back from someone I approached. I'd estimate that 90% of the women I approached were taken, 8% weren't interested, and 2% engaged in conversation. My motivation to continue investing my time in that realm has diminished. Getting ghosted after what seemed like a pleasant interaction can be disheartening. In summary, it's a significant social effort for a statistically unlikely gamble. Men would rather conserve their energy. It becomes exhausting and emotionally draining to keep taking chances. I now prefer to wait for women to initiate some form of interaction in social contexts, indicating they are single and interested, rather than wasting time on unlikely outcomes. Story 22. I am going to say this at the very top for people who won't read to the end. Most women are not crazy, liars, evil, or out to get you. Most women are normal, decent people. Where did this idea come from? Listening to women and observing outcomes. Listening to women. Listening to everyone else decline to look at the situation without bias or consider what information was available to the accused, or base guilt on what he did and not how it was interpreted or what was reported to have happened. Watching people attacked for trying to be objective, thus making others afraid to defend anyone. It's not that most women are crazy, or even a lot of women are crazy or dishonest or evil. It's that there is no defense against those bad actors. If you run afoul of a woman with a personality disorder, a perception disorder, a sociopath, someone with a grudge, or just a person who craves attention, there are sick people in this world. Some of them are women, and if they want to hurt someone or gain sympathy, they often take the zero risk and easy reward option. There are no consequences for false reports, perjury, unjust sentences, or making someone a pariah. Not only do you not have the benefit of the doubt or a presumption of innocence, but those who are open to your innocence are attacked for it. That's a bad situation for anyone to be in when facing public approval, especially when guilty people who are lying and innocent people telling the truth sound exactly the same. It's rational to be wary when someone can harm you using your community, your employer, or the legal system to their advantage. There is no disincentive to do so or consequences if it is done. There are rewards for doing so. You don't have the benefit of the doubt or presumption of innocence. You can't effectively defend yourself. Those who do defend you are considered guilty by association. Incontrovertible proof of innocence is very unlikely and doesn't give you access to justice, remuneration, or meaningful exoneration. People are opposed to consequences for lying because they feel it will discourage actual victims from reporting. They argue your justice and safety is less important than someone else's. Not to mention that false positives and false negatives are a wholly separate issue that have fundamentally different requirements to prove. Yet people still accept this compromise of their values even though it is not needed and doesn't help anyone. Pretend you were a woman who wanted to harm someone for whatever reason. Being purely pragmatic and assuming your target is a man, and weighing the risks to yourself, the labor required, the chance of success, and the extent of the suffering, what approach would you take? Imagine some demographic was playing a harmful game, but instead of being reviled and punished, they were celebrated and you were punished. Would that reality change your comfort level or what vulnerable positions you'd put yourself in? The loss of intent to be considered guilty is the fundamental issue. It is exacerbated by perverse incentives and a lack of consequences. I will say that I like to travel, and I have noticed the climate is very different in different areas and also very different among different age groups. I've talked to lots of normal people and lots of troubled people. It makes perfect sense that some people are less aware than others. In summary, it's not that women are crazy, liars, evil, or out to get you. Most women are normal, decent people, just as most men are decent people. But you still take heed of those who would cause harm. 10% of the population has a personality disorder, perception disorder, sociopathy, or is just plain evil. Women can be just as troubled as men. If one of those individuals decides to hurt you, it is only their moral compass that discourages them. I think a lot of men will now only approach women after they trust that they are reasonable and healthy individuals, which poses a catch-22 for obvious reasons. Even if this doesn't faze you, you still hear women talk about how they do not want to be approached all the time. It's normal to avoid actions that people consistently express they do not like. Story 23. I believe many people lack good social skills. Even if they approach a woman because they are interested, they often fail to make a meaningful connection. Repeated failures can discourage them from trying. Additionally, most men are likely honest with themselves and realize that simply talking to a woman may not spark her interest, which can lead to inaction. There is a general lack of charisma in these interactions. Story 24. The problem is men who cannot read a situation and determine if it is appropriate and whether the woman they are approaching is interested, in addition to men who become aggressive and abusive when they are rejected. Story 25. Women have been rejecting men long before the internet. Reading body language and being able to adapt can minimize awkward situations. Story 26. In real life, I have dealt with those fears, approached women, and it turned out fine. You are a lot better looking than the rest of us. Please don't start with the whole looks don't matter monologue. I didn't believe it 25 years ago, and I don't believe it now, especially when all evidence, both firsthand and from other men, proves otherwise. Story 27. I think it's the digital age. Previously, one either approached or didn't. Case closed. These days, the internet is filled with stories of both questionable individuals and presumed creepy actions. Even if you help someone in distress, it can lead to a lawsuit. People inundate themselves with misinformation regularly, and logic is used less and less. This is unfortunate. Younger generations, instead of writing to advice columns, Google their concerns, such as, what does it mean if a guy looked at me? The results can range from interpretations that he likes you to suggestions that he may want to harm you. Story 28. I don't try to engage with others. When I'm at work or out and about, I become quite antisocial and prefer to focus on reaching my destination. I also wouldn't feel comfortable being approached by a stranger, receiving their number, or being asked for my number. Story 29. Most of my friends are women, and I have heard how annoying it is to be approached when they are not interested, whether they are busy, not attracted, or not in the right mood. I do not want to be annoying, so I do not approach. Story 30. What is often overlooked is the significance of body language and social cues in successful interactions, whether between strangers or otherwise. Many confident individuals are unaware that they are subconsciously sending out signals and communicating before any verbal exchange occurs. Those who are conscious of this phenomenon often struggle to articulate or discuss it. By paying close attention, You can sense when someone is open and receptive to your approach even before you initiate it, through indicators such as eye contact and smiling. In fact, you can invite someone to converse with you without uttering a word. This nonverbal communication also indicates when it is best not to approach someone, as it reveals disinterest, helping to avoid awkward situations. This concept explains the cliché of making eye contact across a crowded room and eventually sharing an intimate moment in a bathroom at a loud party or concert. It is a genuine experience and a more effective strategy than approaching strangers who have not signaled their awareness or interest. Story 31. I subscribe to the position of evolutionary psychology, which suggests that approach anxiety is a fear developed through our history in tribal societies of around 200 individuals. In modern times, there is little consequence to rejection. One can attempt as many times as desired, and in most cases, rejections do not lead to violence or social isolation that could end one's genetic line. However, in smaller tribal settings, the consequences were different. You could face violence from competing males, with no authorities available to serve as neutral arbiters. You could also be socially ostracized by other women who witnessed the rejection, similar to how women may label men as creepy today in localized settings. In this sense, this fear was rooted in genuine concerns. Although society has evolved rapidly beyond those old structures, our bodies have adapted much more slowly, and we maintain that approach anxiety instinctively. The positive aspect of approach anxiety is that it can be overcome with practice. It is a learnable skill. Story 32. Women create TikTok videos at the gym in revealing attire to gain attention and views, but then they become offended when someone looks at them. They share these experiences to draw even more attention to the situation. It's contradictory. Story 33. Women and the Me Too movement have made it unsafe to talk to women. It's no longer worth the risk to my reputation to even say hello. They can enjoy living with their cats and drinking boxed wine, wondering where all the good men went the day they pass on, as far as I'm concerned. Story 34. Internet discussions often involve negative perspectives from certain groups. There are many scenarios that seem so absurd that I believe they are fabricated. I think some individuals are simply disturbed and enjoy creating drama. By the way, I like your name. I appreciate being considered as the second person. Thanks. Story 35. There is a chorus online that sings this very loudly and seems to come to the top of all related posts and content. This gives the impression that it is a broadly held view. For a good while, I fell into this trap too. When I tried, I was respectfully rejected and moved on, which was no big deal. The issue lies in being villainized for the approach or demeaned as part of the rejection, not the rejection itself. You're not interested. That's cool. It's disappointing, but thank you for being honest. I'll get out of your way. I don't deserve to be mocked for my approach or made to feel like a creep. Some go too far with the approach. They don't take no for an answer, pester, overreact, or attempt to guilt trip. And that's where some of the negative sentiment began. Story 36. My female friends have talked about being approached, and it rarely turns out well. They do not want to risk their safety just to give a man a chance simply because he approached them in an uncommon manner. To be fair, their fear is justified, though not always accurate. Many individuals who feel frustrated and hopeless after being rejected due to paranoia might react dangerously. Again, the frustration is understandable, but how it is handled is another matter. Unfortunately, the more often people are rejected, the more miserable individuals there will be. The more miserable individuals there are, the more likely they will take drastic actions. The more desperate individuals take drastic actions, the more cautious and selective women will be. The cycle continues to worsen. Personally, I now focus on making friends with women, removing the possibility of romance from my mind. It allows women to relax, and I am not exposing my vulnerabilities. It is not an ideal method, but I have made some good friends along the way. Story 37. Because the main thing you hear from women is they do not want men around them, much less speaking to them. It is not worth being ostracized and made lonelier by expressing yourself. Story 38. Asking someone out does not make you a sexual predator. Finding someone shy attractive does not make you a sexual predator. There is no such thing as a man who isn't a sexual predator. Story 39. I've seen a good list of reasons in the comments, so I won't list them again. I will say that I am not very sociable. I struggle to show interest in a girl, so playing the number game is nearly impossible. I realize I'm not very attractive, no matter how much I take care of myself. I quickly feel like I would be bothering people just by talking to them. I am not good at small talk, and I mean it. I am a man of very few words. However, I don't feel like I am lacking confidence. Story 40. When it comes to rejection, it is not just a corporate term. It is about having emotions towards someone, and if they turn you down, it is not as simple as just moving on. First, you need to take time to heal, and then you can start to move forward. Story 41. They can. It's just that you have to be a bit more mindful these days. I've had women come up to me in grocery stores, getting obviously within range, seemingly hoping I will strike up a conversation with them. But there is always the possibility that they were just trying to see or pick something off the shelf and were not interested at all. It is also very much state dependent. I am usually exhausted most of the time, and trying to charm a woman in that state, giving off a negative vibe, isn't wise. The reasons why men feel they can't approach are endless, but at some point you just have to take the risk. In my entire life, there has literally been one woman who has ever approached me with the intention of getting to know me personally. Story 42. I have never personally approached a lady I find attractive. As a result, I have never had a girlfriend. Story 43. It's not something that's done where I'm from. Just walking up to a stranger in the street when you're seeking intimacy? In pubs and at social gatherings, it's fine, though. Story 44. It's just easier to swipe. Every woman I've been in a relationship with in the past 7 to 8 years has been from online dating. The risk of public humiliation isn't worth it. Story 45. The standard response you receive is no. However, if the likelihood of no is greater than maybe, you will quickly cease your attempts. Story 46. It's not worth it anymore. Between the constant rejection and not wanting to bother someone who has to deal with being approached by inappropriate individuals all day, the fact remains that anyone who claims to be a great significant other is not being truthful. I don't deserve a significant other since I can't put in the work to be worth dating, even someone with low expectations. Story 47. Because unless you are an 8+ and in the correct setting, there is a 0% chance they want you to approach them. Additionally, if they do not want to be approached, they will publicly shame you or worse. The worst she can do is say no. This is not even close to the worst thing she can do. Story 48. I believe the notion that women will be offended is exaggerated, but it takes a considerable amount of confidence to make a cold approach. Story 49. It is not fear, it is common decency. If all men approached every woman they were attracted to in public, women would stop going out. As it stands, some women are approached so often that they prefer to stay inside. It is more than creepy. It is an inconvenience for them. I turned 15 in 1980. I am among the oldest of Generation X. I never approached a woman cold in public. I always waited for her to show interest in meeting me. Maybe I learned it from watching a character bet her eyes at another? Who knows? But I ended up with a wonderfully amazing partner, so it worked for me. Story 50. Before social media and modern culture, it was difficult. Now, due to the toxicity in interactions, it often feels unworthy. Story 51. I mean, if I don't know you, I don't want to hear your sweet talk. That's a rule for women, men, kids, and older people. But this is just a personal preference. Story 52. I don't know. It seems like there has always been a clear distinction between places where it is socially acceptable to approach a complete stranger and places where it is not. Story 53. From people who are intimidated by it. It can be terrifying. I used to be shy, but now I am not at all. No, it is not easy, but much of it is based on observation. Look at what they are doing, who they are with, and whether they are smiling. What is their body language like? Have they made eye contact with you? Are they looking around? Look for signs indicating if they want to be alone or if they might be looking for company. Are they engaged in deep conversations with their friends or just hanging out? Finally, if the signs look good, just go talk to them. My best line is, Hello there, I am. Smile and be polite. Most of the time, I get at least a smile and a polite response, such as, sorry, I have a boyfriend, or something similar. Say, thank you, have a nice day, and move on. If they are rude, you did not want to talk to them anyway. And sometimes you get a date out of it. Story 54. The problem isn't that we aren't supposed to approach women. The problem is that we are expected to be mind readers. We are responsible for any result we get without consideration of our perspective. That is how we are treated by society. If she likes us, it's great. If she doesn't, we should have known better than to ask. There is almost nothing in between these two results. So yes, men can definitely approach women, but the deterrent is substantial. A bad result is really bad, and we have no social support to recover from it. We are disposable. Thus, even if the chance of a bad outcome is low, if the potential result is significantly worse with no social way out, that chance becomes much more impactful. Story 55. Many individuals are unaware of how to behave appropriately in public or approach others in a decent and respectful manner. They assume that no one can, which creates a significant misunderstanding. The distinction between someone who is charming and someone who is off-putting depends on various factors. However, individuals who lack understanding may benefit from stricter guidelines, leading to the simpler conclusion of avoiding approaching others altogether. Story 56. I believe it has always been present. Rejection is unpleasant for most people, and the fear of rejection is very real for many. The reason we are seeing it more now is that dating has changed significantly in the last 10 years. With dating apps becoming popular, approaching women in a traditional manner feels less normal and more intimidating for many men who may not have experienced it before. Story 57. I don't romantically engage with women I see out and about. I may playfully flirt, but I'll never ask for someone's phone number in public unless we share a common interest. For example, if we're both stopped at a scenic viewpoint on a hike, are at the rock climbing gym at the same time, or happen to be riding our bikes next to each other one day. Personally, I'd rather find someone who enjoys similar activities before deciding to pursue them. Story 58. I haven't approached a woman for romantic purposes in a long time. However, if I found someone attractive, I would simply say hello. If we connected, as they say these days, I would ask them out. Sometimes it's that easy. This was before the era of dating applications, but I would likely do the same now. It would probably be much easier. I enjoy living in the real world. I am not really interested in social media or any dating applications. Story 59. If you see a woman alone in public, it often means she is waiting for her partner, manager, or any combination of the above. Approaching her can make you seem intrusive. This belief has been ingrained in me from past experiences, and I doubt it will change over time. If dating applications promote the idea of never approaching women, they have not succeeded with me. Tinder is the least enjoyable mobile application I have tried. It is frustrating, but what else can I say? Story 60. There were a few videos on the internet of women being sexually harassed when a man approached them in public. A person needs to see only 3 examples to believe there is a pattern. Story 61. It stems from spending too much time online, reading stories from women about unwanted advances in places like the gym, the store, and class. Approaching a woman simply because you find her attractive creates pressure to impress her right away, or you risk coming off as another person making her uncomfortable. It is an easy choice to leave her alone if you have any consideration and are unsure of how she will respond. This eventually leads to the belief that you are not permitted to express any direct interest in women beyond polite conversation without her explicit invitation. Story 62. It seems strange to me, but I'm nearly 40. I've never had a bad experience asking a woman out. If she is not interested, you can usually tell from her words or body language. If you find out she has a partner, apologize and move on. It doesn't have to be awkward. I believe many men overthink things. Perhaps that's true for people in general. Story 63. People live vicariously through the failures of others they have never met. These encounters do not have to be real. They can be staged conversations or movie scenes, and people will present them as warnings to all men. If you are not completely socially inept, You can communicate your intentions and even receive a positive response. At times, you may get a negative response, but rejection is not as daunting as you might fear. Keep it professional and move on. Story 64. Workplace training. Required training. Sexual harassment. None of this training is effective. It does not deter inappropriate behavior. However, everyone else signed up for home security to ensure they do not make anyone uncomfortable. Men should never approach women except on a dating app or at events specifically for dating or speed dating. A club or bar is specifically mentioned as an instance where it is not acceptable. The same applies to the gym, etc. Story 65. Two of the loudest voices from women are, "I would never have known violence if it weren't introduced to me by men," and "I just want men to leave me alone." Personally, I have been criticized for following the idea of just say hi, or I say hi, but she responds, bye. As we age, we become more accustomed to our ways, and when we get used to being single, not many will want to partner up again. However, it's 2024. If she's interested, she can speak up. But she should also keep in mind that men were taught not to assume she's interested just because she spoke to them or was nice. So either be direct or don't bother. Story 66. There are several factors that contribute to that mentality. Part of it is insecurity, stemming from not feeling good enough or believing that a woman is out of one's league. Additionally, some women express frustration about being asked out frequently. Coupling this with the understanding that certain places, such as gyms and workplaces, are generally not acceptable for pursuing romantic interests limits the opportunities for men to approach women. While this mentality is largely mental, it is certainly influenced by societal views and expectations. Story 67. Real-life approaches have been the best way for me to meet women. It's insane how easy it was to get someone to like me. The only thing I need to do is walk up to a girl, talk to her, and get her Instagram or number. I ask to do something together and see if the romantic vibes are there. Either she'll give her Instagram and ghost me, go out with me and we become friends, or if all things go as planned, we'll date. I have had moments where I got 8 Instagram accounts and no one wanted to go out, and that's fine. I just move on. There are times when I have 8 Instagram accounts and will only meet after 2 months because they see in my stories that I am pretty cool. There are also moments when I have 8 Instagram accounts and they want to meet right away. You would never know where you stand if you don't approach girls. It's amazing. Story 68. The problem is that if someone is attracted to you, it's usually acceptable. The worst likely outcome is a polite refusal, accompanied by a compliment. If they are not attracted, it can feel like a significant rejection, confirming that society often views individuals as objects. The practical takeaway is to A. Focus on your attractiveness, B. Learn to read subtle cues, or C. Aim for individuals who are not at your level. Story 69. Men are taught that women cannot show their shoulders because it would be distracting to men. If it is inappropriate to look at a shoulder, imagine how terrible it must be to approach a woman. In short, this is what is expected of men. Story 70. I often notice people I am interested in while they are at work, and I feel they do not want to be approached while they are working. They are typically focused on their tasks and cannot easily leave. However, I experience significant anxiety, so it is not just that I find it uncomfortable, but there is also the overarching fear of being judged. This is especially true if I see the person frequently. The dynamic would change drastically, particularly if they were to reject my advances. Most of the time, I would prefer to be their friend rather than risk upsetting them or making them uncomfortable by asking them out, which could lead to never seeing them again. Story 71. I can approach women in real life. I just don't because it usually leads to boring first dates with people I have nothing in common with, even when it does succeed. Story 72. I don't often approach women because I don't want to bother them. When I have approached women in public, it has usually been because we were at the same event, such as a music festival, or there was a key opportunity like helping her with something, sitting next to each other on a flight, or running into her multiple times. If it's just a girl at the store, even if I think she's amazing, I won't approach her. Story 73. Those individuals have poor social skills but are unaware of it. Perhaps they use negative tactics with women. Individuals who use negative tactics with me are often surprised when I do not respond positively. Story 74. What has made it more problematic is all the people who approach them and treat them poorly. If everyone were polite and respectful, it would be less of an issue. Story 75. I don't know why any man would want to approach women now. We are used and treated like garbage, as if we are merely life support systems. Women will destroy our reputation unwarranted for their own gain, and then they do not live up to expectations or are already taken. There's a lot of hoops to jump through to be treated well. The vast majority think they are above us, and the double standards and body positivity movement have turned dating into a joke. Story 76. When too many men were raised by single mothers, they became afraid of women and were crippled by anxiety and underdeveloped social skills. It is sad how backward society has become, and this will continue unabated. The future seems bleak indeed. Story 77. Social media manipulation is convincing men that the vocal minority of women who react negatively to a man approaching them is the worst thing ever. Dating app companies benefit from this trend, as it increases their revenue. Many men are convinced that they cannot approach women in real life, leading them to spend money on premium services like Tinder. This issue is also partly an online phenomenon. While many men still approach women, we are observing trends among forum users, who are not often seen as the most socially skilled individuals. Story 78. I think it is mostly social anxiety and fear of rejection. If you approach a woman politely, it is very rare for anything to go wrong. Trust me, I have been turned down plenty of times. I just go back and hang out with the guys, laugh off my failed attempt, and move on with my life. Story 79. About 10 years ago, feminist blogs began discussing women experiencing street harassment. Many of these blogs were based in New York City or covered the experiences of women in major cities. Subsequently, these issues were picked up by more mainstream media, also located in New York City. This awareness spread through American culture. Somehow, the general sentiment that urban women do not want to be sexually harassed while walking down the street and minding their own business was misinterpreted as men should never approach women in public for any reason, or they risk being labeled as offenders. It greatly depends on context, approach, consent, and the individual person. I believe the street is still a poor place for such interactions because most women aim to travel from one location to another and do not wish to feel objectified. A workplace is also inappropriate since women may feel tired, trapped, or distracted from their work. A bar, party, or even a bookstore is a more suitable environment. Any place where people go intentionally to socialize is an acceptable setting to approach women, provided one is respectful and attentive to their signals. Story 80. Feminists attempt to discourage unattractive men from approaching them in various locations. Each individual suggests different places, but when combined, it amounts to nothing. Story 81. The internet, whether through social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels or community forums, often does not accurately represent the outside world. Story 82. These individuals are either self-aware or overly self-conscious about their presentation. All you need to do is avoid being rude and try not to put her in an uncomfortable position. Then you'll be fine. Story 83. Because too many men did not know how to take no for an answer or when it was appropriate. So, you have been placed on timeout until you can learn. Story 84. I believe there are several factors at play here. I am not entirely sure if you are basing your thoughts on friends, internet chatter, or other influences, but I wonder how much these individuals approached women before the COVID-19 pandemic and before TikTok became more prevalent. If they did not do so prior to that period, assuming these were your friends, as we do not know your age or from your experiences, I can understand why there might be greater concerns. I think the Me Too movement significantly influenced this situation, making men more cautious about potential consequences should something go wrong. Additionally, the rise of cancel culture, combined with the TikTokization of complaints about trivial matters, has contributed to the current climate. Coupled with the COVID-19 pandemic and the insular nature some people have developed, these factors combined have likely led to the issues you're describing. I mention this as someone who is completely comfortable approaching women and asking for their numbers. Nonetheless, I went through a phase where I could collect numbers while out, but none of them ever led to anything substantial. During that time, from around 2022 to 2023, I found this incredibly perplexing. Despite my efforts, dressing well, making them laugh, and having good conversations, I encountered a complete lack of follow-through. I had never experienced such a situation before. Either the women weren't being honest with me or they said yes just to end the interaction. I find that puzzling because I would expect them to say no if they weren't interested. I would have been completely fine with that. However, many men struggle to accept rejection, which carries its own risks and concerns. This makes it frustrating. Why waste my time when a simple text or direct communication could suffice? I believe there has been a recent shift back towards meeting people more organically, especially since last summer. Engaging in activities or shared interests provides a better environment for meeting potential partners, and I think the ability of men to confidently approach women is undervalued or underappreciated today. The problem arises when men make interactions uncomfortable, act inappropriately, or cannot handle rejection well. I also share this perspective as someone who has been falsely accused of harassment in a professional setting. It is essential to be cautious in any interaction. I personally think groups focused on, "Are we dating the same person?" contribute significantly to toxicity in dating and complicate matters more than they intend. However, I refuse to let a chance to talk to or make a cute girl smile pass me by. Most women appreciate and respect a confident attitude, and approaching with a bold mindset should be the default when making your move. Story 85. Out of fear of very negative consequences, such as being arrested or canceled on TikTok, this is brain rot. Story 86. The concerns expressed by a minority of individuals on the internet often bear little relation to real-life issues. Story 87. Many men misunderstood the statement, "Don't be creepy or threatening when you approach a woman," to mean don't ever approach a woman, because they cannot differentiate between normal behavior and behaving like a creepy threat. Story 88. Many people struggle to read the room and understand body language. You should be able to tell from the first time you make eye contact whether a person is open to being approached. Being able to read social cues is essential, and many people struggle with this. They often cannot differentiate between accidental eye contact, when someone is scanning the room, likely looking for someone else, and direct eye contact. This confusion can lead to awkward or negative encounters. Story 89. There is a country song that parodies the idea that the worst someone can say is no, perhaps before the age of social media. Now it feels like a minefield, and many men prefer not to pursue a woman than to face consequences such as being criticized or rejected publicly. It really comes down to whether the man is considered attractive by the woman. If he is, then he is the kind of person she would like to be approached by, and that's acceptable. However, simply asking someone out politely can lead to serious repercussions, such as losing a job or legal troubles. For many, it's not worth the risk. Social media is filled with videos indicating that women are tired of being approached by men, so unless it is clearly evident that a woman wants to be approached, many men will refrain from doing so. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.